I'd like to call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Thank you. Mayor Wiggins?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith?
Here.
Councilmember Copenport?
Here.
Councilmember Davies? Councilmember Davies is absent.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to invite you all to stand as we have the invocation by Pastor Chris Frost from Mountain Bible Church, and remain standing while Mr. Smith leads us in the flag salute.
Let's pray. Good evening, Father. We thank you for everybody in this room, those in front of me and behind me. We pray with the psalmist that you search us and know our hearts. See if there be any anxious ways in us. Try us and see the pain that's inside of each one of us and lead us into the way everlasting. Father, I pray for those in this room that are going through difficult trials today, that you would give them a proper perspective of their pain that is producing something good in them. I pray that they would realize, like pure gold needs to go through the refiner's fire in order to be proven genuine, that these trials are proving their faith genuine. Give us a proper perspective on what's important. It's not our stuff or the possessions that we own. That will not endure for eternity, but what will endure is our faith, hope, and love. And one day we'll shed faith because it will become sight. And we won't need hope because all of our dreams will be fulfilled. And love is the only thing that will endure forever. So increase our love for one another, and may we realize how much we're loved by you. We cast our cares and burdens on you this evening because you care for us. We humble ourselves before you, and may you lift us up and lift this city of Tehachapi up in your proper time. Be with this meeting, and may your hand be upon it as you accomplish your will. We pray this in your Son's name. And all of God's people said,
Amen. Please remain standing for the flag salute.
Salute. Pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. May be seated. And at this time, we will consider the consent agenda. All items listed with an asterisk are considered to be routine and non-controversial by city staff. Consent items will be considered first and may be approved by one motion if no member of the council or audience wishes to comment or ask questions. Is there anyone in the audience who would like something removed from the consent agenda?
Number three.
Number three.
Who said that? Can you just, I know it sounds silly, but I gotta have you in the
That's
mic.
okay. Number three, Jim Jacobs, City.
Thank you. Okay, council? I'll entertain a motion to approve minus number 3.
Motion.
I move that we pass the consent item.
Second.
Second. Oh, I thought you said, yeah, I didn't see it, so I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda without number 3. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Let the record show it was a 3-0 vote. Audience oral and written communications. The City Council welcomes public comments on any items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council. We respectfully request that this public forum be utilized in a positive and constructive manner. Persons addressing the council should first state their name and the area that they reside and what the matter is they wish to discuss. If comments are concerning an agenda item, those need to be made at the time that agenda item comes up. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to comment? Okay. All right, number 3. Mr. Jacobs, you asked that to be removed?
Do we want to discuss that now? Is that the question?
Yes.
Okay, I haven't been here for a while, so I apologize for that. Adopt a resolution authorizing the construction of certain city records. What does certain city records mean?
Happy to answer that. So we have an adopted records retention schedule that follows along with that of the Secretary of State. Anytime we are following that retention schedule and it's time to destroy those records, whatever they may be, we bring that to the council first for approval before we actually go through that process. If you look at the agenda, there's a full list of all of those records.
Thank you.
Would you like a copy of those?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to approve number 3.
Okay, I move that we adopt a resolution authorizing the destruction of certain city records, subject to city manager and city attorney approval.
Thank you. Have a second?
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Let the record show it was 3-0. I'm sorry, I haven't coughed all day until I get here. Finance Director, disbursements and bills for RSI.
We can take that. Normally, this would be on consent, however, Mr. Davies is an employee of RSI, and he's not with us tonight, so it is the invoice for the reimbursement of unleaded and diesel fuel that we pay for through RSI.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Motion?
I second.
Been moved and seconded to approve payments for RSI Petroleum. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Let the record show it was a 3-0 vote. Second reading and adoption of an ordinance amending section 13.04.110 regarding delinquent water services.
Honorable Mayor Wiggins and council members, Hannah Chung, Finance Director. The agenda before you is adoption of an ordinance amending section 13.04.110 regarding delinquent water service payments and resolution adopting associated policies. The background is the amendment of ordinance section 13.04.110 regarding delinquent water service payments was introduced during the council meeting on February 3rd, 2020. The reason for the ordinance amendment is to comply with the law SB 998. City has to put the law in effect effective as of April 1, 2020. The SB 998, known as the Water Shutoff Protection Act, establishes new procedural requirements and regulations for all water retailers when they seek to discontinue a residential customer's water service for non-payment of a bill. By way of background, the legislature has declared water service to be a human right and is taking steps to limit the ability of water utility agencies to discontinue service, especially for low-income residential customers. SB 998 is only applicable when water service is discontinued for non-payment. It does not apply under other circumstances where water service is terminated, such as customers' use of illegal connection. In addition, SB 998 procedural requirements only apply to residential customers. So with that, there are two policies associated with SB 998. One is residential water discontinuation service policy, and the other one is delinquent utility bill collection, the policy that reflects the city's the change of current practice based on SB 998. And staff's recommendation to council is to adopt an ordinance amending section 13.04.110 regarding delinquent water service payments and adopt a resolution adopting the discontinuation of residential water service policy and delinquent utility bill collection and water reconnection policy, and also repeal Resolution 40-02.
Thank you. We need to take these separately.
There's only one, isn't there?
Well, I thought you were
No,
talking
there's
about...
one ordinance and two policies adopted.
All right, but you're not talking about number 7 yet.
We didn't adopt it. We are,
The policy is
yeah.
number 7, though.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's a different item number.
right now, on the ordinance.
They're one and the same, but this is the ordinance, so we'll take it.
All right, all right. Any comments from the public concerning adoption of this ordinance? Council?
Just so on the first paragraph, it says city has to put the new law in effect as of April 1. We're putting the ordinance in effect, correct? We're not
We are just complying with the new law.
complying with the law as of April. Okay, correct.
Do you have a motion?
Motion on staff's recommendation.
I second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Let the record show it was 3-0. And then number 7.
Again, Madam Mayor, Wiggins and council members, Finance Director Hannah Chung. The item before you is change of salary schedule effective, and salary schedule effective dates for police officers, union police officers.
No, number 7, Hannah. You jumped ahead.
Did I?
Yeah.
Did I go ahead? I'm sorry. I thought I did combine it together. No.
Well, we just need to vote on number 7 now then.
Go ahead and approve number 7.
All right. Are there any comments from the audience regarding number 7?
What exactly are we?
This is to adopt a resolution adopting the discontinuation of residential water service policy. Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
Second?
Been moved and seconded to adopt number 7 as presented by staff. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Let the record show it was a 3-0 vote. Development Services Director reports.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got a whole page of agenda for you tonight. I'll do my best to make this as efficient as possible. The first item I have for you tonight is the adoption of an urgency ordinance amending Ordinance 1702-740 and attaching municipal code section 1504-160. We talked about this a couple of months ago. This is a tangential discussion. Every 3 years, the state of California updates the California Building Codes, which is a long list of codes that apply to everything from a new water heater to a new Walmart. And then, so the state mandates that we, 1 year after their adoption of those codes, we adopt those codes and enforce them on a local level. The state also allows lesser or lower jurisdictions, be it the county or a city like us, to adopt additions or modifications to those codes so long as the changes don't result in a reduction of the strictness of the code. The county of Kern, being the size they are and being the various areas that they serve, particularly when it comes to fire coverage, they do adopt an additional set of Kern County regulations that layer on top of the state's regulations every 3 years. And since we contract in particular with the Kern County Fire Department, among other agencies that are affected by these codes, to provide services within the city, staff has in each of these cycles recommended, and the council has agreed, to adopt the county's additional regulations so contractors who are working in or out of the city are dealing with the same sets of rules anywhere here in the county, and so that our relationship with the fire department stays positive so that they know that when they go into a building here in the city of Tehachapi, it's governed the same way that a building anywhere else is in the county. And so that's what I'm asking you in this item and the next to do tonight is to adopt the county's regulations as modified for use in the city of Tehachapi. The modified code changes have no meaningful changes over what you all adopted 3 years ago, but each cycle we have to go through this process. So the first item I have tonight is an urgency ordinance that allows me to immediately begin enforcing this code today or tomorrow. And it becomes superseded by the next item when you guys go through the first and second reading of the actual code adoption. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and read the recommendation because I'm required to one time, and then Tom tells me I don't have to read it for the next item. So with all that said, my recommendation tonight is that the City Council adopt by title only an emergency ordinance of the City Council of the City of Tehachapi adopted ordinance number G8866 of the Board of Supervisors of the County of Kern, State of California, amending chapters 1704, 1706, 1708, 1710, 1712, 1716, 1720, 1724, 1726, 1728, 1732, 1736, 1740, 1744, 1748, and 1756 of the Title 17 of the Ordinance Code of the County of Kern concerning building regulations. General Residential Code, Building Code, Green Building Standards Code, Mechanical Code, Housing Code, Plumbing Code, Electrical Code, Existing Building Code, Grading Code as revised hereinafter, Fire Code, Dangerous Buildings Code, Building Relocation, Mobile Home and Accessory Structures, Floodplain Management Code, and Energy Code, and amending Section 1 of Ordinance Number 740 of the City of Tehachapi and the Tehachapi Municipal Code, Section 1504-160. So read by title only, that is my recommendation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
And that's why you get the big bucks. Are there any questions or comments concerning this urgency ordinance from the audience? Council?
When you read that, you stated 1728, 1732, 1736, which is not what we're seeing here. 1736 isn't here, and 1756 is on there twice. So just so
Where are you looking?
On the actual agenda.
on the actual agenda,
I'm reading off my actual staff report.
so on the actual ordinance.
Yeah, please use the description on the actual staff report that's got my name at the top.
Right. Okay. Just
1756 is just in there twice.
but he said 1736, which isn't on the agenda part of it. So
It's on the
so it should be on there. but-
Okay, it's on the report, it's just not on this.
It's the typo.
The ordinance itself.
56 is listed twice.
And 36 is not listed. Is
Just
that
so
right?
we're-
So,
No, there was one that was not supposed to be
The
listed.
second one.
There was one that was not, as I recall. I got 1736 on the ordinance itself.
yeah, so it belongs.
Yeah. well,
Yeah, and he did read that. Yes.
on the agenda.
The
Yeah.
agenda.
I think the agenda was just.
Yeah, the
Okay.
agenda needs to have 1736 on it.
Yes.
And only one 1736.
That's all I was pointing out.
Okay.
So does the agenda have to match the ordinance then?
Or that's the question, is the agenda that went to the public?
No, as long as we understand now that 1736 is in there and 1756
It's
is
just
the
once.
ones.
Okay.
Okay,
Just a little detail, probably typo, right?
Yes. I suspect we got a 3 instead of a 5.
That's what it looked like.
Yeah.
All right. And with that, motion to approve.
thank
As
you.
as read by title only.
Do I have a second? Minor
I'll
allergies.
second.
Oh, good grief. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Let the record show it was a 3-0 vote. Number 10.
Okay, number 10. Number 10 is effectively the same issue. This is the first reading of the actual amended ordinance for the same purpose because an urgency ordinance can't be used forever. It's only anyway.
And it's missing 1736.
Well, it's written in my staff report, it's just not written on the agenda. So the same modification is necessary. 1736 is included, 1756 is also included, but only one time. And with that, my recommendation is that you all introduce by the title that I previously read, this ordinance for adopting the Board of Supervisors amending chapters. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the audience concerning this?
All right. I'll make a motion to introduce as read by title only.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded as presented by staff. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Let the record show it was a 3-0 vote. city water and sewer system analysis. That's a mouthful.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and council members. The next 3 items are all part of a fairly sizable studying and analysis effort the city undertook in the last 2 years or so. Tonight we have with us Josh Nord with MKN and Associates. Josh was the lead consultant on the efforts that we did, and also Allison Lekowitz with Lekowitz and Sang, municipal consultants. They were sub-consultants to MKN on this effort. So the first item tonight for you is the city water and sewer systems analysis presentation and the adoption of revised and updated water, sewer, and sewer trunk main connection fees. As I hope you all will recall, the city entered into an agreement with MKN in May of 2018 to go through a very comprehensive review of our water and sewer system. The primary purposes of that effort were to model, to revisit a comprehensive analysis of how our system operates today, how we think the system will need to grow in the coming years to respond to development, and what it's going to cost, and how to fund those improvements. So there was quite a bit of engineering effort that went into that. So the first purpose of my report tonight is to inform you that all of that engineering analysis has been completed. MKN produced an updated and detailed water and sewer system atlas maps, which frankly I know that Don would agree was a quantum leap in our record keeping about where we have pipes and valves and manholes and all the different facilities that deliver water to your home and carry away sewage. So really helpful to the staff, particularly utility department and the city engineering department. The data was then input into a detailed hydraulic model for evaluation of our water and sewer systems. The models were used to evaluate the city systems for any deficiencies or anomalies that we can identify today. Working with the city staff, MKN produced a projected 10-year growth scenario for the city, and using those growth projections, they then modeled, hey, if we grow in this fashion, what are we going to need to do to meet that growth? Are we going to need a new water well? Are we going to need to make improvements to the city's wastewater treatment plant? Are we going to have to upsize the pipeline from here to here? These are the types of things that they look at. And MKN did that work for us and produced a number of reports that completed that effort. And then the closeout effort, the primary objective of tonight's item, was that we asked MKN and their sub-consultant to analyze whether or not our connection fees, which we collect today, are appropriate for providing the funds necessary to meet those projected needs. So with that, I'd like to invite Allison to come up. She's going to give you a brief presentation of how she wrote her report, which is included there in your staff report, and then when she's complete, I'll give you my recommendation.
Oh, good evening. So I've got a very brief summary presentation. All the nitty-gritty details are in the report. It's really just an overview. So connection fees are one-time hookup fees paid by new development to pay for their capacity in the water and sewer system that they will be occupying. The fees are not paid by current residents or ratepayers. This is only for new development. So connection fees are governed by the Fee Mitigation Act, which is a section of the government code. We are required to establish a nexus between the cost of facilities, the capacity that new development will occupy the facilities, and the amount of the fee. So in essence, growth pays for growth. We want to make sure that the fees are fair and reasonable. So we determine the reasonable cost of infrastructure, determine the capacity provided, and then the amount of capacity used by new development to proportionally assign costs. So you have a few different types of fees. You have a water connection fee, which covers all the water infrastructure within the city. Same for sewer, covering sewer facilities. Then you also have trunk sewer fees for specific planning areas throughout the city. So new development within those planning areas would pay those specific fees. So we spent a lot of time thinking about the methodology to use. We used a combination of methods. The first was the buy-in method. So existing facilities that you have in place but can continue to accommodate new development into the future. New folks are going to buy into a small portion of those facilities. There's also an expansion cost. So those would be facilities that are 100% triggered by new development. So if you have no growth, you wouldn't need to build some of these items. Since you have growth, those items then are triggered and you'll be funding them. We also wanted to be as fair as possible, so we excluded projects to correct existing deficiencies. Those are typically funded through water and sewer rates. Anything that was governed by a development agreement, so it had another source of funding, or anything funded by grants. And then we did a little bit of cost escalation to make sure we were covering the full cost of the facilities over time. Another really big issue was scaling the fees to different types of land uses. We understand you have all different types of new businesses coming into town. And so we wanted to make sure that, a barber shop pays its fair share compared to a big, gas station and truck stop, for example. So we looked at the amount of water use that different types of development would use, and sewer flow, as well as pollutant strength. So how costly is it to treat their waste at the sewer treatment plants? So this is all establishing that nexus, that proportionality that I talked about earlier. And then the trunk fees are sewer flow related. So to give a brief overview of the current and proposed fees, the water connection fee is proposed for a single family home. It's proposed to decrease from about $7,000 to about $2,000. Sewer treatment from about $7,300 to about $4,800. And then the different trunk areas are all listed there as well. And so I will hand it back to Jay.
Thanks. So I know it doesn't sound very exciting, but the scaling component of work that Allison did was a really important function for us. We had been, it's hard to describe how complicated it is. A single-family house is very easy to calculate the fees because we have created the fees based on that individual unit. And we have a good idea here in the city, particularly after MKN's updated work, of what the average person in the city consumes in water or produces in sewage in a given day. We have a lot of data that helps us come up with that. But if you're a new Love's Travel Center, or you're something really small like a 2,000 square foot dress shop with a small bathroom in the back, there's a radical difference in how much water you consume or sewage you produce between those uses. And so having really good scaling information makes it appropriate. And so there was a lot of effort done there, and the results, we were using scaling factors from 1992. That's how outdated the city's old system were. And people they use water and produce sewage in vastly different ways than they used to. And so that was a lot of work associated with this. And you will see a couple of the fees ended up going higher associated with the trunk mains, and the others came down. We were shooting for the principles that staff has been operating under for years under the council's direction, which is development pays its own way, and the price or the cost should be what it should be. Whether that's up, down, or indifferent, that's the policy we've been operating under. So I want to thank MKN and Leckwitz and Sang for their work on this. From a fiscal input standpoint, capital account funding is its own bucket. And so we strive with these fee programs. We gather the money, we keep it separated from the general fund, and then we fund these major improvements out of those funds. And so the two shall not meet is generally the policy that we utilize unless we bring you guys something different. So some of the funds right now have a positive cash balance, some have a negative cash balance. Those were all accounted for in Allison's study and are calculated there in the fees. So with all of that said, my recommendation is that you adopt 3 resolutions, one for the water fee, one for the sewer fee, and one for the 4 trunk main fees. Of the City Council, the City of Tehachapi updating water connection fees, sewer connection fees, and sewer trunk main connection fees. And I suspect you'll have questions.
Are there any questions from the audience concerning this?
For City of Tehachapi, do we have the list of the actual fees? Because
It's in the staff report.
what you put in
Right there.
all right, that's all I wanted to say.
Okay.
Thank you. Council?
So we had a substantial reduction specifically in water from about 6,800 to 2,000 something. So my question is going to be, when we did our expansion of facilities, and then in the sewer, it's reduced as well, sewer connection fees, would we have to add on to the sewer plant? We were pretty flush with cash to be able to manage that in the years past. Does this constrict us to a point where, if this is where it has to be? Because you can't be making money on these accounts. You have to be what the value or the facility costs. That's what you're going to charge and divide out for future reference, correct? For future...
Correct. A couple of things to note there. One, the law makes it very easy for you to not collect enough money, but makes it very hard for you to collect too much money. I think for good reasons. And so, there are a couple of things that I think play into that I think are really important for people to understand. We've done an excellent job. The water reduction fee represents, frankly, an excellent effort in the last 10 or 12 years for the city to be well prepared to have really high quality water supply facilities. As you know, we built 2 sizable new tanks at the Curry Tank site. Those have a great deal of capacity in them to accommodate additional usage. We do project the primary cost of that $2,000 fee is the expectation that we're going to need to construct another water well in the next 10 years. But other than that, there are a couple other things built into the fee, but there aren't a lot of improvements that MKN's modeling efforts identified as needed in the next 10 years, even if the city grows. And that's representation of the city having done a great job in the last 10 years of building high reliability, high quality facilities for the benefit of the public. And so that's frankly a good thing. We also reorganized where we put some of these expenses. Deep down in these studies, if you read through them, are a list of the types of improvements we want to make. I can't steal the thunder. 2 items later, I'm going to be talking to you about a rate increase associated with the water entitlement fee. That's partially because we've moved some of the expenses that we were accounting for in the $6,780 out of that collected fee and moved it to a different fee, and I can explain that at that time. Because those who pay that fee are the ones who are most utilizing the facility that's associated with that. I hope that makes some sense. So that's also a part of it. The other primary thing that changed the fee is the fact that people after the drought in 14, 15, 16 changed the way they consume water and generate sewage. We just consume a lot less water than we did 10 years ago. And so we don't need to build as many facilities to manage that growth, particularly when it comes to water, than we would have needed 10 or 15 years ago. I can't understate how that changed the way that we do things. So we're very confident in providing to you a recommendation that this is the right number for growth in this community. Growth is paying their own way. We are not putting this on the backs of ratepayers. This is going to where it belongs, and this is the appropriate number in our opinion.
And if you look at some of the other graphs in the report, if anyone's interested, for example, Roseman currently pays like a $9,000 connection fee for water, or I'm sorry, that was for sewer. Bakersfield's at $8,000. We were at $7,200, and we're going to be going down to about $4,800 sewer connection fee.
Page 108 in the PDF there.
So we were actually in the median of a lot of them, but we were not even close to the very highest areas that had a lot of capital improvements or whatever caused them to have very high connection fees.
Back 2 or 3. So yeah, what you're speaking about for the page 108 is what I have on right there.
There you go, sorry.
So that's a list of where our fees land currently versus where. So yes, our water and sewer were tending towards the high side, but not at the top, and now they're tending towards the low side, but not at the bottom.
Right.
So
my only concern was that we, in the study, we have a nexus for improvements that are going to be required for expansion that will be charged to any developers or people building new homes.
Yep, correct. So that's simple.
And that's the main thing for the public to understand, is that the current ratepayers, all of us in this room that reside in the city, are not going to be paying for expansion from a developer or whoever takes out a permit. Okay, that's.
Do you have any comments?
No.
I wanted to comment, but Mr. Smith already did. I don't want to see on Facebook tomorrow, the next day, that city raised everything, and that's not exactly what we're doing. We're not raising the rates of someone who's lived here 50 years. We're looking at the future, and I just want to emphasize that.
And it's going down, actually.
Yes, and it is.
Rates are being reduced. Okay.
All right. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
A motion?
We're approving all three resolutions.
All three resolutions, I'm sorry.
Okay.
You make that motion for all three?
All three, I guess.
Okay, and I'll
That's what
second
they
the
say.
motion for all three.
All right. All those in favor as presented by staff, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Let the record show it was a 3-0 vote. Number 12.
And I just want to thank Allison again. You guys can't imagine the amount of labor she went through to produce that report, and I just appreciate her professionalism and all that she's done. So, the next item for you tonight is to introduce amendments to ordinance number 694, chapter 1308 of the Water Entitlement Use Policy. So, the Water Entitlement Use Policy is attached to the issue before, but not attached. And I'm going to do my best to, back in the 2004, 2005, 2006 boom, the city of Tehachapi was experiencing a great deal of movement towards the generation of new tract subdivisions. And the council at that time was concerned, rightly I think, that we weren't going to have long-term water supply. Now, by water supply, I probably ought to clarify that I'm not talking about the number of wells to physically extract water out of the ground and deliver it to somebody, but the right to pump sufficient water out of the ground or to purchase water from the state water project, the right to pump the water out of the ground to supply the needs of our community. So that's what I mean when I say water supply in this context is I'm not talking about the physical pumping it out of the ground, putting it in a tank or delivering it to your home, but the right to do so out of our basin, which is governed and adjudicated by the courts. Anyway, so back in 2007, the city council was concerned that we were growing so quickly that we may not have a sufficient long-term water supply. So they produced a water entitlement use policy, which effectively said that new residential development needs to provide funds to aid in the procurement of long-term water supply. And that was captured in ordinance number 0709-694, and it created a fee mechanism that basically gives developers, or created an obligation on developers either to A, bring water rights to the city, or B, to pay a fee in lieu of bringing those water rights to the city, so that the city could then spend that money on bringing water rights to the city. The ordinance, however, the ordinance was restricted to residential development only, but has been enforced since that day, and the fee was set at $500 per single-family house. However, as we were going through this last 2 years, Dawn and I in particular, spending a lot of time reviewing our policies, how we collect money, how we spend money, how we're going to meet the needs of this community for the next 10 or 20 years, we began to realize that the entitlement fees restriction to residential use was problematic. And the best way I can describe that for you is to point to Love's and Pilot at the edge of town. They consume a great deal of water, and most of that water is not serving the public, the citizens of the city of Tehachapi. It's water that literally is consumed and transported out of this community, either somebody buying a soda out there or using the restroom as they're stopping and traveling through. And so they're consuming a great deal of water out of this basin ultimately, but because they're not a residential development, they did not pay the water entitlement policy fee. And so part and parcel to our larger conversation about getting the fees to where they belong, staff is recommending that we make two primary modifications to this ordinance. The first is to broaden the application of the ordinance to all development within the city of Tehachapi. So that includes any residential or greenfield development requiring discretionary approval, meaning it has to go to the planning commission to get some kind of approval, right? Discretionary action to adhere to the requirements of the ordinance. And then also, one of the things that the study found, this ordinance also says that the minimum amount of water they shall bring to us is 1/2 an acre foot per house. Again, in 2015, everybody changed the way they consumed water. That number now looks more like 1/3 of an acre foot per single family house. And so we're proposing amendments to this ordinance on those two principal bases, that we would broaden it to be any development, and that we would reduce the maximum, however, from a half acre foot, I'm sorry, the minimum from a half acre foot down to a 1/3 acre foot. So hopefully that makes sense to you, and my recommendation therefore is that you introduce an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Tehachapi amending ordinance number 694 and Tehachapi Municipal Code section 1308-020 pertaining to water rights and water entitlement fees.
Any questions from the audience concerning this?
Mike Buffer, City of Tehachapi. Did you also, I understand you reduced a single residence home, but do you account for the excess water at a Love's and have them bring more than that?
To answer that question, yes. So the way the wording in the ordinance works is you shall bring the reasonably assessed amount of water attributable to your development, and it shall not be less than 1/3 acre foot per single family house. So it's, in Allison's recent work, that's that scaling discussion that we were talking about. We now have a master list. It's included in the previous report if you really want to get into it. But every single use has a scaling, which says, for instance, a single family house is one. You pay one fee for one single family house. But if you're Love's Travel Center, you pay 2.3 single family houses per 1,000 square feet of your facility. That's an example of a ratio that's produced in that scaling, and there's a whole chart full of every type of development we could think of. And that produces, and it was all based upon detailed mathematics and looking at actual metering records and looking to the city of Bakersfield, city of Modesto, city of LA, looking at how these are other consumers. So this is what I was thanking Allison for. It was a ton of labor to create that cross-reference. So absolutely, the way this ordinance reads, the Loves may pay the equivalent of 50 single-family homes. I'm just making up a number, but based upon that scaling chart, they will pay whatever their appropriate scaled-up number is.
Thank you. It sounds like you guys did an excellent job.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the audience? Council?
Just thank you to MKM and the staff. Very complicated stuff. It's been a number of years since we've had to take a look at it, and this would be a good starting off point for, do you anticipate a review every so many years now? You don't necessarily have to wait 10, 15, but or not even annually, but at some point.
Yeah, 5 years is the right number for that. So this ordinance, hopefully we won't have to revisit it ever again, the item that we've got now. But yeah, the fees and the previous item and then the one that I'll be discussing with you, typically 5 years is the right number.
Okay.
So.
All right.
All right. I'll entertain a motion to introduce and give first reading to an ordinance regarding the water entitlement use policy as presented by staff.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Let the record show it's a 3-0 vote. Number 13, sir.
Thank you. This is my final item for tonight, so we can all breathe a sigh of relief. Again, part and parcel to all of this larger discussion was a continued review of, I think I mentioned in the last item, that the water entitlement fee is currently set at $500 per single family house. I will it was based on the idea that we could go out and buy 1 acre foot of water rights, pumping rights for $1,000. And that we could, and since a house uses a half an acre foot, each house should pay us $500. We'll use that $500 to go buy an acre foot. The most recent acre foot water rights that were on the market, and there were some recently within the last few months, were on sale for $10,000 an acre foot. And so we've known for the last couple of years, and we were waiting for this more comprehensive study to make sure we got the numbers correct, that this $500 fee was not appropriate. In addition to that, along came GSP, the Groundwater Sustainability Project that Don's been, and we've been working on, but Public Works has been taking the lead on for the last year, which provides, as you guys will recall, a potential project for the recycling of our water and for its future use in supplementing our groundwater supply. And so that is in effect also a supply option available to us. So we asked MKN to come alongside us and to help us adjust the water entitlement fee to consider funding either water rights that were more expensive or the GSP project. And I think it would probably be better explained by Josh because I've mucked it up already. Anyway, but Josh Norton is here with MKN. He has a brief presentation to tell you about. We asked him to update the water entitlement fee, and he went through a study report to do that. So why don't I turn it over to Josh?
Good evening. So as Jay mentioned, he's actually hit a lot of the points, so I'll be brief. Most of the details are in the study. It's not a very lengthy study, but the purpose was to revisit this water entitlement fee and see if it was still applicable to the conditions you find yourself in. So I'm going to cover the code, which started being covered by Jay. Talk a little bit about the framework and some options you have for bringing additional water into the basin, and then some recommendations. So as you just looked at, Municipal Code 13-08020 established the water entitlement fee, and the point was to protect existing customer supply from future development. And as Jay mentioned, there's a couple of options. There are really three in the code. The developer can bring a water right sufficient to supply the development. They can purchase unallocated water rights from the city, assuming there are any available for purchase, or they can pay the water entitlement fee, which as Jay mentioned would be sufficient to go acquire those rights. And then they could use combinations thereof. That's in the municipal code as well. And as Jay pointed out, it's 20-year supply at a half an acre foot. We just amended that to a third of an acre foot, considering that. And then it is open to reevaluation, which is what was asked to be done. So even when we started into this effort, city staff engaged with us and asked us to keep looking at a few more options. The idea being, if for any reason any one of these paths, GSP or something, didn't come to fruition, is there still a sufficient fee available to get those water rights for future development? So option one, purchasing on the open market. As was mentioned, that could be as high as $10,000. But in practice, it's just a transfer of a water right from somebody who has a right within the adjudicated basin to the city. Option two would be importing water through the water master, Tehachapi Cummings County Water District, and they would do that through their existing facilities, bring that up and credit it to the user in the basin. And option three would be implementing a project like GSP that would provide for an additional allocation in the basin so that you could have additional allowable pumping. And all three of those are consistent with the municipal code and the government code. And as Jay mentioned, the current fee is $500, established in 2007. So just to briefly talk on the pros and cons, I guess, of the three options, or explain them in a little more detail. The purchase of water rights on the open market is, the proper term is illiquid. Whether or not they're available and the pricing of them is just highly subject to fluctuation. Assuming that a right is available for purchase at any given time isn't really an assumption you can make. So you can imagine trying to assign a price to that is somewhat difficult. Option two, purchasing and importing state water through Tehachapi Cummings. That is something that can be pretty well defined. So using a third of an acre foot per single family residence and looking at a 20-year supply, you need to import a little over 6.5 acre feet per single family residence. And Tehachapi Cummings goes through an analysis, I believe annually, where they reevaluate and establish the rates for importing that water. Currently it's $477 an acre foot. And option three, implementing a project. Specifically here, we looked at the groundwater sustainability project. You've probably heard in great detail some of the memorandums that were done identifying what that project looks like. The capacity of the project, as conceptualized right now, is a little over 1.5 million gallons per day. And if you divide that out by current customer use, GSP could supply water to a little over 5,300 single-family residences. So then we did just a little bit of math analyzing the cost of options 2 and 3. Really on option 1, it was very difficult to pin that down because the availability of water rights is very variable. But on option 2, establishing importing water, that was a calculation. It yields about $2,700 per acre foot if you were to import 6.6 per single family residence. And then on the option of GSP, I'm sorry, I just said that backwards. Option 2, importing water is $3,148 per single family residence. And on GSP, the current cost estimates, if you divide that out by the number of customers, it was a little over $2,800 per single family residence. So in the end, in the report, we recommend that you establish the fee at $3,148 per SFR, and that as you collect those fees, you would expend them toward the 3 options that are available to you. So purchasing water rights if they are available, implementing GSP, or importing state water.
Thank you, Josh. And so again, in summary, the intent was to calculate a couple of different ways to calculate the fee. Ask Campaign to give us a recommendation. They're recommending $3,148, which we agree with, and then to give us instruction on, as we collect that money, how should we spend that money, and in what order of priority, which Josh presented, and we again agree with, which is that if we can buy water rights, we're going to go do that first, and they fit within the budget, we're going to go do that first. Secondly, we spend that money on GSP, and then if GSP becomes infeasible for some reason because it just isn't done until it's done, we still feel firmly that it's a good project and will occur, but it's not done until it's done, then we would begin purchasing water through TCCWD for the execution of the project. So with all that said, again, the fiscal impact associated with this, so a big part of the change in fee, just to hit back on the issue from 2 items ago, we reoriented some of the project costs that were in the water and sewer connection fee previously and associated them with this water entitlement fee because it's more intelligent, it's more appropriate. If we have to increase the level of treatment in our wastewater treatment plant in order to execute GSP, the fee falls here under the water entitlement fee, not under the sewer connection fee. So that's why you see, the reality is most new developments will pay all of these fees. They'll pay the water fee, they'll pay the sewer fee, and they'll pay the water entitlement fee unless they bring us water rights themselves. And so you really should be looking at them holistically. But anyway, fiscal impact is the same as the previous fee program. This is about paying your own way. So these funds that will be collected will then be funded and kept separately, and then will be utilized in the order of priority that's recommended should you guys agree to this fee. So with that, I recommend adoption of a resolution of the City Council of the City of Tehachapi increasing the water entitlement fee described at section 1308.020B of the Tehachapi Municipal Code. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from the audience regarding this? Council?
So could you give a real snapshot for everyone in the room what GSP is, the Global Sustainability Project, correct? Of why it's not done now, but what we're trying to get to. Just a real quick summary.
Yeah, absolutely.
Treatment and future.
Yeah, so the council approved about a year ago an initial budget of about $750,000 to take that project as conceptualized in a previous report from a few years ago forward through the planning stages only. The project envisions upgrading the quality of treatment that occurs at the city's wastewater treatment plant from secondary treatment now to disinfected tertiary treatment, which I think for the sake of the layman means the water that comes out of the plant looks a lot like this at that level. And then we would convey that water to a recharging facility within the basin and recharge that water into the ground, where it would then spend another 6 months to a year minimum, based upon studies that have to be done to prove this out, residing in the groundwater basin before then being reutilized for potable purposes. The technical term is indirect potable reuse, but we named the project Groundwater Sustainability Project because we think that frankly better describes for people what's occurring. So the concept is that we are producing in that project self-sufficiency. in a time in which California water is not so self-sufficient anywhere. It's not sustainable anywhere. So that's the basis of the project. Does that provide?
Right, so we're basically going to recycle to the ultimate degree water that we're, from the wastewater treatment plant, will go to, when he says a recharge facility, we're going up into a dam. It's going to be sitting there, and it's going to go down through the layers of the earth and be filtered naturally, even further. It's as clean as you're going to get, but even further, so that we have a complete cycle of our water. We're keeping it here locally, as opposed to having to constantly get it from the outside. Which leads to my next question. Thank you for the explanation. So we're basing the $31.48 figure on a $10,000 acre foot estimated cost, correct?
No. So 10,000 was just the number that we have. It's based upon option, the purchase from TCCWD option that's presented in the report. So there were 3 options presented, and we asked MK specifically for that because, quite frankly, water supply is a huge issue for the growth and sustainability of this community. And so we wanted to have options. I mean, that was Dawn and I's conversation on a number of occasions, was we need to make sure that we have an option. And so one of the options was purchasing 20 years worth of water per single family house from TCCWD. We would pump it up the hill from the aqueduct and recharge it into the basin on our behalf. That calculated out to 6.6 acre feet per year per single family house. At $477 per acre foot, you get $3,148.
Okay.
So that is, that's the option that the fee is based upon. And the groundwater sustainability project is very close to that number, but within that number. And so it is also a viable option if we charge that fee.
Okay. We basically took the higher of the 2 estimates. For the
Okay, hope everyone else is following this, because the best way is if the developer comes in, they buy water rights from someone who's got 2 wells out in the valley somewhere, and they transfer those water rights to us, and instead of in lieu of the fee.
Yeah.
Correct? Or a value of that water right to the fee. The other part of this is the import of 20 years supply through Tascomin County. But as we know, in the dire drought years, the state will say, wait, we're going to cut our allocations. Where does that put us if we've purchased an allocation for a subdivision in the city? Now they say, oh, you don't get as much water. How does that play out in 10 years from now?
The concept is that the money goes into a fund, so we're going to purchase water when it's available. So the idea under that approach, if we end up, that's option 3, based on ranking priority. That's our least favorite option for how to spend the money, but it is our option if we need to get to that place. The concept is we're going to buy the water when we need it, or when we can get it. So at 6.6 acre feet total, if we get a housing development that puts in 100 homes, we need to go and purchase 660 acre feet. Well, say there's a drought, and that's not coming down the aqueduct this year or next year. Well, the funds are still sitting in our bank account, and so 2 years from now, we'll go and buy 660 acre feet as soon as we can buy it. And so the concept is, and we do have a banked water reserve account with TCCWD. That's a component of our, so we do have a buffer existing now. So say we get into a drought, we may use some of that buffer space, and then when we get out of the drought, we'll not only restore the buffer, but then use our saved money to purchase the additional water that we need under that scenario. So there's some flexibility in that, but the bottom line is the money's in our account, and so we can use it when we can.
When you purchase it, are we literally purchasing it and putting it into our aquifer?
Yes, that's the concept.
So we are banking it locally in our local aquifer versus saying we have dibs on so many.
Yeah, no, I don't think Dawn is in favor of buying paper water. Correct. We want to buy real water.
That's
the concept here.
Okay. So we will buy real water from the Tascomin County aqueduct water, and then put it in our basin.
And to be clear, that's only if, what we're probably going to do over the next few years is just bank this money. Because if GSP continues to roll forward and comes to fruition, we're gonna wanna spend the money on that. That's a better, longer, more sustainable solution than the other. But if we get a couple years down the road on GSP and something happens, the state changes their regulations, we can't get through the process for some reason or not, there's just a lot of work that still has to be done, then the money's there and we'll switch gears. We'll come talk to you guys about that, obviously, if that occurs. But the issue was, honestly, if I have a single-family house that comes into my office 2 weeks from now, we do know that they're out there and they're, we need to start collecting the funds now so that we're prepared to deal with that. So we're going to keep the funds, and ideally, we'll either buy water rights if we can find them, or we'll continue to fund GSP, and if GSP doesn't work out, then we have a backup plan. So that's the idea.
I would like to add also that there was a lot of discussion on this item between staff, and I think this is a fantastic solution that provides us the maximum amount of flexibility to collect an appropriate fee and be able to use that money for a number of options for long-term water liability. When somebody comes in currently and pays $500, we're obligated to provide them water for the rest of eternity for that $500. And this adjusts that fee to appropriate number and provides us flexibility on how we provide that water for the next 20 years plus.
Okay. I like the concept of having not all eggs in one basket on one plan. We have 3 different ways we can do it. Of course, the best way is to, if someone has the water rights, to get it right then. So I did want the public to look at the fiscal impact just before the recommendation, because in an earlier agenda item, we said, okay, we went from about $6,800 for the water fee down to $2,000. Oh, now we're going to add $3,000, like a shell game. But no, what we're doing is attaching the fee for water here, and then the water rights portion of that fee that we used to collect at the $6,800 rate, we're going to collect it. But overall, the total fee for sewer connection was about $14,539 prior to this, and now all those fees with the water rights, the water connection, and the sewer connection is around $10,000, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So the net total of the previous fees was $14,530, and the net total now is $10,000. And that $10,000 is further, if you come to us with the water rights needed for your development, you don't have to pay the water entitlement fee. That $3,000, the one that we're discussing right now. So you can reduce that further. So it incentivizes people, quite frankly, to go find water rights and bring them to us. And they're the ideal for us because water rights never go away.
Right. And
they're forever ours and under our control. They're not paid. Even GSP, we got to operate that system and keep it within the regulations of the state. So there's not, water rights don't cost us anything to own. It does incentivize folks to do that, but yes, net total, the fees, all of them that we presented here tonight do represent a reduction. Yes.
Okay. And to reiterate, this is for future development, those who are going to be building homes in the future. This is nothing associated with current people in this room in the city paying their sewer and water fees. Okay.
Any questions from the audience? Entertain a motion as presented by staff.
Move that we adopt that.
Adopt the resolution.
And I'll second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Let the record show it was a 3-0 vote.
Thank you.
Thank you. City Manager's report.
I don't have anything.
Okay. Council member reports. Do you have anything, Mr. Smith?
No, I had a story, but I better not. So you, with the mainline studies of and the new atlas for all the water lines in town, those were just the main lines in the streets? Yes. The previous item that we were talking about, correct? Yeah. So we have a really good updated map where the water lines go to every residence.
Yeah, what we had before was schematic in nature.
Yeah.
It told you the pipe size and what road it was on, but now we've got a lot better about where it is on the road and how it's valved for control and operations. So huge improvement.
Well, the story was, a few years back, I had this bubbling brook appearing in my front lawn. It was over on the side of the yard where, here's my meter coming straight to my house, but the water is over here and it's not a water line. Turn my water off and it's still going. So I went down to the curb and dug out, because here's my water meter, and over here was an abandoned water meter line where you could see the stub, the two elbows where a water meter was a gazillion years ago. My house was built in 56. So I thought, water's coming from somewhere. So I go ask my neighbor, we turn his water off and the water goes away. Turn it on, it comes back. In the old days, they would just run a line over this house and 3-4 houses, vacant lots in the block. They just run it down that way because before the meters, and it might even be at a diagonal. It wasn't even straight. It was coming from their backyard back to the front, heading toward that meter with bubbling up in the front yard. So to make a long story short, this is good to have, to know where the pipes are everywhere. So anyway, thanks for all this. I just got to do this, sorry.
You have anything?
Oh, I've been approached by several people in the community that are appreciative of the cleanup from the snowstorm and the windstorm. And also, just for FYI, our girls' basketball team is going into playoffs on Friday. They had a bye tomorrow, darn it, because I have liked to have gone. And they will play the winner of Centennial High School and Mission Prep on Friday at 7 o'clock at the high school gym. So anyway, we're proud of them. It's been a while since that's happened. I think they were ranked 3rd in the state, or in the section. Okay, yeah. At first they were 1st, so something happened. So now they're only 3. Okay, that's it.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we're going to adjourn into closed session. And if there are any votes taken at that time, our city attorney will come back into this room and announce that. Thank you.